Hi, it's Dawn from Ninja Bunny Crochet. Today I have for us to do the boxed shell ladies top. I made this top using Red Heart Unforgettable. This is a 100% acrylic yarn. It's a medium 4 worsted weight yarn. It has 270 yards per ball, 3.5 ounces or 100 grams. I used approximately 4 balls to do this project. I had a little bit left over, so you're gonna want to make sure you have 4 balls so that you have enough yarn to complete your top. This is a roving yarn, so if you want to substitute a different yarn, you're gonna want to keep that in mind that this is that's going to be the type of yarn you want to try to use for this project. For today's tutorial, I'm going to be using a different color than the one that was in the picture. That one, if you're interested, that color was called Petunia. Today I'm going to be using the color Bistro. This sweater is done in 2 panels, so you're going to make 2 identical panels and we're going to sew them together. The size hook I used is a J 6.0 millimeter hook. You'll also need a yarn needle and a pair of scissors. The information for gauge, the finished bust sizes, the starting chain counts for each size, I'll put in the description box below. That way you can choose whatever size you want to make. You'll have that information. The sizes I have are small, medium, large, extra large, 2X, and 3X. However, if you prefer to have the written instructions, I will also put a link in the description box to my Etsy shop where you can purchase the PDF of the pattern as well. So let's grab our yarn, grab our hooks, and let's start crocheting. Okay, start the top. We're going to start with a chain of 83. This is for the large size. If you're going to be making the small size, you want a chain of 73, medium size 78, the extra large size will be 88, the 2X size 93, and the 3X size 98. So once you have your chain, I'll meet back up with you once you have your chain. Once you have your starting chain, for garments, I like to flip my chain over. Most projects I do like to flip my chain over and work in these back bars, but particularly for garments because I believe it gives a nicer finish to your project. So we're going to work second chain from hook. We're going to do a single crochet. We're going to single crochet in each chain across. Continue working single crochet across the chain till you get to the end of the row. I'll meet up with you at the end of the row. I'm at the end of row 1. I have 82 stitches. You'll have however many that you have for the size that you're working on. I am working on the size large. To start row 2, we're going to chain up 2 and turn the work. The chain 2 does not count as a stitch. We're going to place 1 double crochet in that first stitch and 1 in the next stitch. Chain 3, skip the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and place another double crochet in the next 2 stitches. Chain 3 again, skip the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and place 1 double crochet in the next 2 stitches. Again, chain 3, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and place 2 double crochets in the next 2 stitches. This is going to be our repeat all the way across the row. Chain 3, skip 3, 1 double crochet in the next 2 stitches. Please repeat this pattern all the way across the row, and I'll meet up with you at the end of the row. I'm at the end of row 2. I'm placing my last double crochet in the last stitch. You should still have 82 stitches if you're doing the large size. To start round 3, you're going to chain up 2. Again, does not count as a stitch. Turn your work, and you're going to place a double crochet into the first stitch, skip the next stitch, and place 5 double crochets into the chain 3 space. Skip the next 2 double crochets and place 5 double crochets into the next chain 3 space. Again, skip the next 2 double crochets and place 5 double crochets into the next chain 3 space. This will be the repeat all the way down the row, so please repeat this until you get to the end of the row, and I'll meet back up with you at the end of the row. I'm at the end of row 3. I have 2 stitches left. We're going to skip the first double crochet, or the next double crochet, and double crochet in the last stitch to finish the row. To start row 4, we're going to chain up 2 and turn the work. We're going to double crochet in the first 2 stitches, just like we did in row 1. We're going to chain 3, skip the next 3 stitches, and double crochet in the next 2 stitches. Chain 3, skip the next 3 stitches, and double crochet in the next. and in the next. So the next 2 stitches. Again, chain 3, skip the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and double crochet in the next 2 stitches. This will be the repeat all the way across the row, and you'll end with 2 double crochets in the last 2 stitches. Please repeat this, and I'll meet up with you at the end of the row. I'm at the end of round 4. I finished with 2 double crochets in the last 2 stitches. To start round 5, we're going to chain up 2, turn the work, and this is going to be a repeat of round 3. We're going to double crochet in the first stitch, skip the next double crochet, and double crochet 5 times into the chain space. Skip the next 2 double crochets and double crochet 5 times into the next chain space. Or 5 double crochets into the chain space. So please repeat this all the way down to the end of the row, and I'll meet back up with you at the end of the row. I'm at the end of row 5, and from here on up to the bottom of the sleeves is a repeat of rows 2 and 3. So please repeat rows 2 and 3 until you have your piece 13 inches. This is for the large size. If you're doing the small size, you want your piece to measure 12 inches. The medium and large size will be 13 inches. All other sizes are 14 inches. So just repeat rows 2 and 3 until your piece measures either 12, 13, or 14 inches, depending on the size that you are working on. Once you have your piece to that specified size, I'll meet back up with you and we'll start the sleeve shaping. I have my 13 inches made, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hook out. I'm going to put a stitch marker in here before we start the sleeve shaping. What I suggest when you're working on a project like this, when you get your second panel done, when you get to this point, compare your 2 panels. Make sure you have the same number of rows of shells up to the bottom of the sleeve shaping on your second panel before you continue on with your sleeve shaping on your second panel. I have got my second panel I've already got made, so I know it's a little hard here to see on the camera, but what I did, here's up to the sleeve shaping right here, and I made sure I compared this bottom panel with the top panel and made sure I had the same number of shells. So when you make your second panel, make sure you do this before you move on to your sleeve shaping on your second panel, so that both of your panels will be the same size. Also, when we get done with the sleeve shaping, when you go to make your second panel, make sure you compare your sleeve shaping too, to make sure they are the same size. So wanted to get that little bit in before we go on any further. So what we're going to do our sleeve shaping is, now that we took our hook out, we're going to go to the end of the row and we're going to take a separate ball of yarn, or you can go from the outside of the ball if you're working from the inside of the ball, or if you're working from the outside of the ball, you can pull from the inside of the ball and get a little bit of yarn. You won't need much, and attach it with a slip knot to the last stitch, because we're going to extend each side just a little bit for our sleeves. So once you attach it with a slip knot, chain 10. So let me bring the camera down a little bit here so you can see. So I already have 2 chains. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then just fasten off after you have 10 chains. Leave a little bit of a tail so you can weave it in at the end. And just fasten that off. And what we're going to do is, when we're crocheting along this row, we're going to crochet into this chain like we did in the starting chain. We're going to crochet along here in pattern to continue to extend out the size so that we can have a little more room for sleeves. We're going to come back to the beginning of our work and remove that stitch marker that we put in and replace our hook. Now on this side we're going to put 11 chains because we need 1 chain for a turning. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, 11. Now turn the work, and we're going to begin the first row of the sleeve shaping. So in the second chain from the hook, get my chain straightened out here. Pardon me, that chain was just a little too tight there, so let me just redo that last chain. There we go. So now the second chain from hook, we're going to start with a double crochet, and in the next chain we're going to do a double crochet, chain 3, and we're going to skip 3 chains, 1, 2, 3, and in the 4th chain place 2 double crochets, or excuse me, 1 double crochet in the next 2 chains. Pardon me. Just like we've been doing the same pattern. Chain 3, skip the next 3 chains, 1, 2, 3, and that's going to put us onto our sweater. And we're going to double crochet in the next 2 stitches. Chain 3, and skip the next 3, 1, 2, 3, and place 1 double crochet in the next 2 stitches. Whew, tripping over my tongue tonight. So this adds 2 more shell spaces, or shell stitches, box shell stitches, on the end of our sweater for our sleeves. And we're gonna do the same thing on the other end when we get down to the other end on the 10 chains that we added to the other side of our sweater. So continue working in pattern till you get to the other side, and I'll meet up with you at the end of the sweater. When we get to the chains, I'll meet up with you there. I'm at the end of the row and I'm about to go down to start going down the chain. So we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, just like we did before, and we're going to skip the first 3 chains. So 1, 2, 3, and go into the 4th chain and double crochet. Go into the next chain and double crochet. Chain 3, skip the next 3 chains, 1, 2, 3, and double crochet in the last 2 chains. And we have two more spaces, 2 more chain spaces like we did on the other end. So to start the next row, we're going to chain up 2 and turn the work. Just like we did for the body, for the sleeve shaping, we're going to start it the exact same way. Double crochet in the first stitch, skip the next stitch, and 5 double crochets into the chain's 3 space. Skip the next 2 stitches and 5 double crochets into the next chain 3 space. Again, skip the next 2 stitches, and we're back onto the body of the sweater, and we're going to place 5 double crochets into the next chain 3 space. This is a very simple 2-row repeat. 1, 2, 3. We're going to continue again in pattern. And since I'm doing the large size, we're going to continue this for 9 inches. If you're doing the smaller medium, 9 inches. If you're doing the extra large or the 2X, you're going to go for 10 inches. If you're doing a 3X, 11 inches. Once you've completed that number of inches, you can fasten off, but make sure you leave a nice long tail of yarn for connecting your shoulders. We're going to slip stitch the shoulder seams together, so leave a good bit of yarn. I would say approximately about 2 to 3 feet of yarn on your tail, so that you have enough yarn to slip stitch your shoulder seams together. Once you've done that, make your second panel just like your first one, making sure that from your base of your sweater up into the bottom of your sleeve shaping, you have the same number of shells, the same number of shell rows. Also make sure that you have the same number of shell rows for your sleeve shaping. Once you have your second panel completed, as your first panel and your second panel completed, meet back up with me. I'll meet back up with you, and we'll sew our sweaters together. I have my 9 inches done at the top for the sleeves on both panels. So how we're going to first start sewing these together, we're going to lay one panel on top of the other with one end to the right where you fastened off and the other end to the left. So like so. Make sure the panels are evenly lined up. I know I can't show it completely in the camera here, but make sure your panels are lined up together all the way across. Like so. Now this is at the top of at the neckline. And what I suggest is you're going to want to leave 6 shells in the center of your sweater so that open for your neck. So depending on what size you're using, you're going to count in on either side so that there's 6 shells on either side for your neck opening. That's going to keep it's not going to be tight, but it's going to keep like the neck opening was in the picture in the beginning. If you want a wider opening for your neck so it falls off your shoulders somewhat, then you're going to want to keep open, go maybe 8 or 10 shells so that your neck opening is wider and it falls off the shoulders. It really depends on what look you're going for on your sweater. But how I did mine was 6 shells in the center. So what I did is I placed a stitch marker in between so that I knew where to stop when I was crocheting in, when I'm slip stitching in from the end of the sleeve in towards the neck. So then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And make sure you're even on both sides. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then make sure you have the same number of shells for your sleeves. 6, 7, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So for the large size, you're going to have on either side of your stitch markers, you're going to have 7 shells to the end of your sleeve. And then 6 shells, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in between your stitch markers, and these shells you're going to leave unworked. So let me bring the camera down so that we can start slip stitching the shoulder seam together. Okay, to start slip stitching the shoulder seams together, I inserted my hook into the first stitch like this and pulled the yarn through. That was on the tail. And then just continued slip stitching across the stitches of the shoulder seam, just like this. If you prefer to whip stitch this, you can do that too. I slip stitched it because of the leaving the long tail. It was just made more sense, and it was just easier to just slip stitch this. So continue slip stitching until you reach your stitch marker, and then fasten it off, but don't cut your yarn yet, because what you're going to want to do is slip stitch your other shoulder seam, then try the sweater on and make sure your neck hole is the right size before you cut off your yarn and weave in the ends. Because if it's a little too tight, you can always back out some stitches. If it's too loose, you can add a few more. So continue slip stitching till you reach your stitch marker, and I'll meet up with you at the end. I'm at my stitch marker, which I'm going to take out. And I'm just going to fasten this off. Now I do have a lot of extra yarn here, and mine got a little bit tangled, so I just got to untangle it so I can pull it all the way through. I'm not going to cut it off right away until I finish the other shoulder and make sure that the neck hole is a good size. So I'm just going to pull it out like that and just leave it hanging, and go to the other side of the sweater. Now, since we're slip stitching this, I'm going to actually flip it over so that I can slip stitch it, and repeat the same thing I did to the other shoulder, to the first shoulder, to this shoulder. Once you get there, try your sweater on, make sure your neck hole is the right size, and then I'll meet back up with you and we'll start sewing up the bottom of the sleeve and the sides of the sweater. So again, insert your hook into the first 2 stitches, pull your yarn through, and begin slip stitching. Your stitches together. Now if you end up with a lot of extra yarn at the end like I did, don't throw that yarn out, because you can use it when you're going to sew up the bottom of the sleeves and the sides. So I'll meet back up with you after you get your shoulder seams completed and you're sure that you have your neck hole at the correct size for you. Once you have your shoulder seams done and you're certain that you have them at the neck hole exactly where you want it, it's the right circumference, it fits well, now you're ready to sew up your side seams. Thread up a yarn needle, and I suggest putting a slip knot at the end of the yarn. It makes it really easy to knot the yarn when you're sewing it up. So I suggest to start at the bottom of the sleeve. It doesn't matter which side you start on. Just insert your yarn needle in the corner and bring that slip knot up, go through it, and then tighten it down. And now your yarn is tight onto your project. And you can just continue sewing with a whip stitch. I suggest a whip stitch on this because your edges are pretty thin on the bottom of the sleeve. You're on the bottom of the chain, and you have a little bit more, whoops, my yarn came out of my needle. You have some definition on your stitches, but once you get along the side, you're going to be working on the sides of the stitches, and you just do your best to whip stitch along the sides. Just make sure you're getting both pieces, the front panel and the back panel, when you're doing your whip stitching. This yarn needle might not be the best one to be using for this project. I just like it because it's got a nice large loop on the end there. But this yarn is a little slippery and it keeps coming out of the needle. So I have to keep putting it back in. You can always weave that tail in afterwards. I mean, you could work over the top of it, but I find that a little bit more distractive trying to work over the top. I just find it easier to push it to the side and weave it in later. But everybody's different. If it's easier for you to work over the top, great, work over the top. So just continue whip stitching all the way down your project like this, making your seam until you get down to the bottom. Now, I didn't go all the way down to the bottom on mine. I stopped one shell before, so I stopped right here, so I left this open like a little V at the bottom. Here, sorry you didn't see that, I apologize. I stopped right here at the top of the last shell and I left it open so it was like a little V at the bottom. That's up to you. You don't have to. I did it. I thought it looked nice to leave that open at the bottom. You can go all the way to the bottom and close it all the way up. It's up to you. But you do that on both sides and then weave in all your ends and your sweater will be completed. Once I have all my ends sewn in, I'll have this complete and I'll pop up a picture. I'll put this on my mannequin and I will pop up a picture to show you and the completed project. So I'll be right back after I have all my ends, all my side seams, excuse me, all my seams sewn up and my ends woven in. So there was a picture of the completed sweater, and here is it up close. I can't quite get the full thing in the camera, so that's why I had the picture. So if you've liked this tutorial, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to ring that bell. Thanks for watching, and happy crocheting! Bye-bye!